Hi, I thought I'd drop in and tell you about a reading project I've devised for myself that's likely to kick off in March, and it's open-ended. Not sure how long it will take because I don't want to sort of make it a burden, but could be done in March. But all hinges on 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a couple of movies, 4 novels, some short stories that inspired the original movie, and some comic book adaptations. So 3 media, work that appeared over about half a century, I think, certainly over about 40 years. And also output from 3 significant 20th century creators. So Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction writer, he's the thread that holds it all together. I've always thought he's an interesting sort of character because he looks like a sort of a head of maths at a grammar school or something, like the world's straightest man, and yet he loved to hang out in the Chelsea Hotel in New York with sort of Nico where people like Nico and Patti Smith and so on lived.
And Cohen and Janis Joplin.
Janis Joplin, yeah.
Leonard Cohen.
He
remembered her well in the
and
Chelsea
on and on.
Hotel.
Yeah.
She was famous. Her heart was a legend.
So imagine that lot at the breakfast buffet.
I'm imagining.
Then you'd see him in Sri Lanka wearing a sort of floral shirt and standing in the surf talking about UFOs. But in terms of his writing, created lots of seminal hard SF works. So he collaborated on the screenplay for 2001: A Space Odyssey with Stanley Kubrick. Now, Stanley Kubrick, I always get the impression I wouldn't have wanted to kick a ball into his garden, but did make some great films. And I like 2001. That's not necessarily a universally held opinion in this room.
Household.
But I was taken to see it as a little kid in 1968, so kind of I saw it raw,
It explains so much.
I know. They should have given me a tab of acid in the Kiora at the intermission to get the full effect. Anyway, yes. So 2001, and there's. But I've read the book, I've seen the film, I've probably read the short stories that it's sort of, it's kind of part of its source material. I've certainly read the comics, but not for a long time. But I've never seen 2010, I've never read the 2010 book, and I've certainly never read Clarke's later ones. So I have these masterworks in a carrier bag here. Lively chaps. So the movie, I will at an appropriate time rewatch the movie. The novel, like I said, Clarke worked with Kubrick on the screenplay, and then the novel appeared in the same year. Slightly, the film was already out. Big deal book because it was a big popular film. But there's is it a novelisation or is it something else? Not sure. I mentioned those short stories. Yeah, so a couple of short stories that had been in magazines in the early 1950s by Arthur C. Clarke kind of feed into it. And I've got both of those in a Puffin book. Puffin being the children's imprint of Penguin, and it's got a rather disturbing cover, given it's a sort of kids' version of a robot crying at the fact that there's some sort of destruction happening in the background. Anyway, in here you do get the Sentinel, and you do get Encounter at Dawn, both of which are sort of part of what went into the movie. Now then, I thought I'd read them sequentially when they were released, these items. I guess I'll be starting with the short stories, watching the movie, reading the book, moving on to comic book adaptations. So the third major creative involved in this taffy pull would be Jack Kirby, who did this Marvel Treasury Edition adaptation of the film, came out in 1976. Very different. So part of my idea is that all of these expressions of the same story have a very, very, very different styles. You know, the sort of the way the movie's done seems to me very different from the book as I remember it. Not that it's got a different plot exactly, just a very different tone. You know, the book's telling you things, whereas the film, it's just show. It's this no-tell, which makes it potentially quite frightening, really. But it's also got its own visual style that is sort of elegant, I suppose, and almost quiet in some ways. Whereas Kirby's like bam, 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 you know, with explosive, fabulous graphics. So he did that, and then that was followed up with a comic book series called 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I reacquired all of those, and I do remember them, and as I recall, the first sort of 2 or 3 seem to be just retelling the same story with different characters going through the same process, and then it takes off in a completely different direction. Now, that'll be interesting to remind myself what that's all about. Then Clark wrote 2010 Odyssey 2, which was adapted into a movie, which I haven't seen, which Duncan tells me is good, so looking forward to that. But it doesn't stop there, because Clark also wrote 2061 Odyssey 3, and finally 3001, the final Odyssey. Now, I'm fully prepared for there to be diminishing returns from the novels, because, you know, maybe the concept hasn't got legs for this many pages, but who knows, they might be great. So kind of keen to explore those as well. So that's my March Monolith Madness project. Like I say, it's something I'm doing myself. If you want to do it, join in, play along at home, obviously you can. That's good. I'll stick a channel on my Discord so we can chat about it if anyone's reading, you know, some of this stuff from the widely available short stories through any of the novels, watching the movies, maybe finding the comics if you can. They can be a bit expensive. So yeah, that's something I'll be doing in the future, or indeed the past, because it's weird that this weird future 2001, what's going to happen by then, is and 2010 as well, are now in the past. But there's plenty of time to catch up. I reckon 2061, that'll probably tell us exactly what's going to happen. Okay, enough for now. See you soon with something else.
He's one of our most prominent space writers. You remember that marvelous movie that Stanley Kubrick did called 2001, and it's based on Arthur Clarke's particular book.